Hello and welcome to Mabinda TV. This is home of Compassionate Conservatism, in which I advocate for a fine balance as sweet spot between individual creative genius excellence as afforded by capitalism and society excellence as afforded by equality of opportunity. So in essence, we are calling for capitalism with a human first, that is capitalism with a human first. So now I'll start with ideas, and in ideas I'm asking what is the future of the platform-based economy? That is, what is the future of the platform-based economy? So of course you have this gig working as freelancing, subcontracting, consulting, employees merge. What is the future of the platform-based economy? And I think, can this economy create the kind of middle class that manufacturing created? And I think this is something that we have to you have to know that basically, where the American companies have benefited the most from globalization, the American companies are the most undercut by globalization. So, can our platform-based economy, can our freelancing job sustain a middle-class job? Maybe that's what we should be asking. Can our freelancing job support a middle-class job? And I think that is why we need to be able to come to the table and really argue on the future of the platform-based economy, because we are giving these platforms really a lot of free stuff. I think it is like in the medieval Europe, basically, where you had a lot of landlords. Really, you had serfs working for landlords for free, and I think maybe this is what is in the platform-based economy. So you have the likes of Twitter, Facebook, Google, maybe even YouTube. You have these likes. Maybe we are supplying them with free information, with free content, and then they distribute. Someone said, I think on BBC, that basically the money is not in producing content, the money is in distributing content. Look at how powerful these companies are, the likes of TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, and I think you can realize they are so powerful because they don't create content, because they distribute content. They are platforms, they are not producers of content. And I think in that case, then maybe we should be rethinking of how can they pay us more, the creators, how can they pay us more so that we create more content, because people wouldn't come to these platforms without our content. And I think that is how platforms are created. And I think for creators, then this platform-based economy is not working for creators, and I think that is why this platform-based economy is not working for creators, and I think that is why we need to come to the negotiating table and basically say, yes, American companies have benefited the most from globalization, but it is time also the American worker also benefited from globalization, because you cannot compete with someone, let's say in India, who is doing a writing job for maybe just $1 per $500 article. An American will need no less than $20 per $500 article, and that is why I would say that you cannot compete with someone in India who does the same job. And I think that is why we need to have maybe these platforms pay American workers better. The manufacturing was great. The beauty about manufacturing, it was that it was a dependable middle class job. You could start from a grade 2 kindergarten. It could support anyone from a grade 2 kindergarten from a grade 2 dropout to a high flying doctorate holder, and they will be supported in having a middle class job that would ensure they could start from the factory floor, and then they would rise up the ranks until they became the managing director. But even if you were on the factory floor, you could still support yourself to be to a middle class kind of life. But is that so with the platform economy? With the platform economy, I don't think you can support yourself. That is why so many Americans are falling off the middle class. And I think very soon, if America is not careful, very soon there will be only two classes in America. Either you are a billionaire class, or you are poor. So the middle class is disappearing very fast, and especially with the coming of the robotics age. In the robotics age, there will be only owner manager, and I think in that case then there will be owner manager. So you could have only an owner manager who owns robotics, and I think in that case then you could have basically a whole billionaire class, maybe just 500 people, and then a sea of underclass. And I think maybe we could have a history of how this began altogether. So you begin with So we begin with in the billion-dollar farm. I think I've never heard of a billion-dollar farm, but if it was there, it could practically employ everyone in the world. If a billion-dollar farm was there, it could practically employ everyone in the world, and that is why I think a billion-dollar farm does not exist. If it was there, it could employ everyone in the world. It could support everyone because it could be so vast. It could cover the whole world that it could employ everyone in the world. That is why in the agrarian revolution, everyone seemed to have jobs, and I think in that case, maybe that was a very, very huge prosperity. Then from a billion-dollar farm, we came to the billion-dollar factory, the billion-dollar manufacturing setup. So this one employed about 20,000 people, maybe about in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, there. Or thereabout. This one employed about 20,000 people with safe, dependable middle class jobs. They supported towns, and then of course they supported towns, and of course paid taxes to the towns, and of course it employed everyone from the executive dropout to the high-flying doctorate holder. So this one supported towns, and of course anyone could get in. So that so long as you had some useful skill or you had physical might, you could get a job at a local factory. So that was about the billion-dollar factory, which employed about 20,000 people. So maybe some people are left behind. Those who never went to school at all were left behind. But it created the American middle class. It created the age of prosperity in America. It created not just age of prosperity, but also materialism. And I think that is why you had that is the era of the billion-dollar factory. Then from the billion-dollar factory, we went to the billion-dollar software company. The billion-dollar software company employed about 500 to 600 people, and these were mostly uber private college graduates and maybe flagship state university graduates. So basically, they were employed in that entity. So it employed those sets of graduates. So maybe the likes of community colleges were left out. Of course, in the factory era, you had even a high school. Most of the people that worked there were high school graduates. But I think in the billion-dollar software company, most of the people that worked there were college graduates. So the likes of those with associate degrees from community colleges, from high school, were left behind, and that is the beginning of the end of the American middle class. So the billion-dollar software company employed just 500 to 600 people, and basically they came from these uber private universities, from flagship state universities. And so that was the beginning of the thinning out of the American middle class, and I think it has thinned out so much so that right now it has thinned out so much so that right now the American middle class is barely recognizable from the one in the 1960s and 70s, and so the age of prosperity in America was in fewer hands, and so that means then that means that basically fewer people are in the middle class. Then from the billion-dollar software company, we moved from that, then we went to the billion-dollar startup as a billion-dollar startup. So the billion-dollar startup employs just about that is the billion-dollar startup is just about 10 employees. Basically, valued at $1 billion. It has no profits, not let alone profits. Maybe it has no revenues at all, but yet it is valued at $1 billion. So you can see how very much these days you can make sometimes even an idea on paper. I think there was an article on TechCrunch.com. An idea on paper basically is valued at $1 billion, and I think these are very crazy times. So you have a few people having those billion-dollar valuations, and I'm asking, what if those billions of valuations? I think in 2021 there was about $285 billion going to. In 2021, there's about $285 billion going towards startups. So what if that money went into the real old motor economy, old brick and mortar economy? I think America could be funding businesses that will be solving our needs, not just solving, creating great products and services, but also creating jobs, high quality middle class jobs in the process. That is why I tend to think we need to be funding not just the startups but the old brick and mortar economy, so that we can have these jobs that can be funded these jobs that can be funded, and then they can increase basically these jobs that can increase these jobs that can increase these jobs that can increase the American middle class. And I think when we do that, then we will be able to have an economy that really supports everyone. So now from the billion-dollar startup, I think now the other one is scary, but this one will eliminate the working class altogether. Of course, we've had a debate about AI, about coming to artificial intelligence, coming to eliminate jobs. So that is going to be a very scary moment for Americans, for people around the world. That is going to be very scary, where we will have an owner manager, basically having an owner and then robots doing all kind of work, and so they will not need a lot of the robots will not need a lot of employees there. So I think these are very scary times, and I think we need to be prepared for what kind of we need to be prepared for what kind of jobs are going to be created. So I think the platform-based economy is kind of an automation, and I think it is going to create middle-class jobs that it is going to create middle-class jobs that really it is going to create jobs that don't support the middle class. And I think in that case, then we need to be able to just have a way that we can have jobs that can create a middle class. I think we need to return to the self-dependable manufacturing jobs. I think that's the middle ground. So that, and I think President Trump was so vocal about that. We need self-middle class jobs, jobs that can be supported by the manufacturing sector. Then from there, I will move over to African politics. In Africa perspectives, I'm asking, can opposition candidates win elections in Africa? Why is it so hard for opposition candidates to win elections in Africa? I think it is so hard, and I think one of the reasons it is so hard is because the incumbent president usually has the hold on the instruments of power. They have they choose the electoral referee, that is the chairman or the chairperson of the electoral commission, and then of course they're the ones who are going to count the votes and announce the winners. Of course, that is going to be chosen by the president, and then of course that is going to be chosen by the president, and of course then the incumbent president has the courts, they choose the chief justice, they choose the top judges, they choose they have the army, they have the police. So it's very hard to beat an incumbent president, and that is why for elections in Africa, usually it is the incumbent president that wins, or maybe not even if not an incumbent president. If the incumbent president is retiring, the candidate that the incumbent president is supporting, as happened in DR Congo. So why is it so hard for an incumbent president to win elections in Africa? And I think in that case, then we need to be able to have free and fair elections in Africa, and I think that will happen only if we have elections that are free and fair, elections that the incumbent president basically is not using their power to be able to sway the scale, because the field is tilted right now. The field is not flat. The field is tilted against the opposition candidates, and I think if the opposition candidates can win elections, then basically we could have a fair democracy in Africa. And maybe that is why there are a lot of military coups in Africa, because they figured it out that they cannot win elections through the military. So they decide that basically they cannot win elections through the military. So they decide that basically then they cannot win elections through the ballot. So they decide they are going to overthrow a country's president. But of course that is not so good, and you have had military coups in Burkina Faso. In the last 3 years, there have been about 5 or 6 military coups in Burkina Faso. You had a military coup in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Guinea, in Niger. Basically, these military coups are not so good for Africa, because they indicate an element of instability. And I think if people view Africa as unstable, then they are not going to be able to invest in Africa. And maybe that is why we need to be able to have a safe elections where power is handed over peacefully. That is the way to project Africa as a place that is stable, that as a place that can do business, and that is how to project power from one regime to another. So we need elections that are free and fair. If democracy is going to work in Africa, then the handing over of power from one regime to the other, from one administration to the other, needs to be assured so that we can have an Africa that we really are invested in the in democracy. And I think Africa is viewed as the most unstable continent. Of the military coups that have happened in the world in the last 3 years, most of them have been in Africa, and that's not a very good track record for Africa to carry around. It is viewed as a very unstable place, and this is why we need Africa to be a place where power can change easily. But it has not been all gloom all around Africa. There have been a few success stories in Africa where opposition candidates have won. Of course, in 2015, the now retired President Muhammadu Buhari beat the incumbent President Goodluck Jonathan. So that was an opposition win. And of course, I think the first opposition win in Africa was in 1981 when the then opposition candidate Frederick Chiluba beat the incumbent President Kenneth Kaunda. And then, of course, in 2016, there was the opposition candidate Nana Akufo-Addo beating the incumbent President John Mahama. Then in that country, in the same year, in 2016, in neighboring Gambia, there was an opposition candidate, Adama Barrow, beating the incumbent president, that is Adama Barrow, beating the incumbent, the 21-year running dictator Yahya Jammeh. So that was in 2021, and then you had also in 2020 you had the opposition candidate. Basically, in 2020 you had the opposition candidate. Opposition candidate Lazarus Chakwera beating the incumbent president Peter Mutharika, and then in 2021 you had the opposition candidate Hakainde Hichilema beating the incumbent president Edgar Lungu. Of course, now Edgar Lungu has had announced that he will retire in politics, but he has turned around and said that basically he will not be retiring. He will be returning to politics again, and of course that means then this war is not over. This is going to be another protracted battle between an incumbent president and a president that was defeated. So you have had those opposition wins. So it is not all gloom in Africa. So we need to be able to have a fair means of choosing the electoral referee, maybe how as happened in Kenya, where both the opposition and the ruling party select maybe a fair number of delegates, an equal number of delegates, to be able to choose the electoral referee. Then you have the courts. There should be special election courts. I think in Kenya you have the Supreme Court deciding the election in just 2 weeks after it is given a deadline of 2 weeks of deciding the presidential election. I think in Kenya, in Africa, we need courts, special election courts, so that if there is a dispute in the election, it is decided before the inauguration, so that you have a settling of that, so that you can have a president that has no baggage, so that once they enter office, they have no baggage and they begin their term. Basically without having no baggage at all. And I think if that happens, then I think that will mean that basically, if that happens, then you will have a president that begins their term without having a lot of baggage on their hands. And I think if that happens, then that will really be a great sign for democracy in Africa. To have courts that decide an election, I think that will be a great sign for Africa, and I think that will mean that democracy will have prospered in Africa, and that is the way. So you should be letting me know on how you think opposition candidates can win elections in Africa. How do you think opposition candidates can win elections in Africa? What is the path forward for opposition candidates in Africa? How can they win elections in Africa? And if how do we strengthen that kind of democracy in Africa, so that we don't have a lot of these chaotic military coups, in which someone just uses the power of the gun to ascend to power. So that's it about Africa. And then in the making America, I'm asking, is there a need for a third party in America? That is, in the making America, I'm asking, is there a need for a third party in America? Because I think a lot of Americans are not satisfied with the two main candidates, that is Donald Trump on the part of the Republicans, and of course Joe Biden on the part of the Democrats. Of course, for Joe Biden, they are concerned about his age, and of course, he has been lackluster in some of the issues. He has not energized his base, of course, and also the age. And of course, for Donald Trump, they feel that a lot of people feel that he has taken the Republican Party and turned it into a Trump personality cult. Of course, remember, Hillary Clinton said that the Trump supporters need to be deprogrammed. They take their orders from Donald Trump, and so they need to be deprogrammed. And of course, you have Joe Biden saying that basically this Republican Party is not your father's party. So the old Republicanism is out of the door, and of course now you have a new age of cultism. So maybe it is a cult right now, the Republican Party, basically where they take their orders from Donald Trump. And of course, Donald Trump, according to the New York Times, Donald Trump is already organizing on how he can institute some of the measures he was not able to institute in 2020 in his first term in office. Someone says that if Donald Trump ascends to the presidency in 2024, in November next year, he will be able to do those things he was not able to do in his first term, and he already knows the ropes. So basically, remember, he had wanted to institute to suspend the constitution and institute martial law in America. So maybe he will be able to do that. And of course, there is talk among Trump circles that basically what Donald Trump is trying to do is to, well, basically what Donald Trump is trying to do, he will be able to institute a martial law, have the military in the states of America in order to come against these people or who will be protesting against his win. So you have the two major candidates. How the two parties really, I think both of these parties have moved to the far. You have the Democrats, they are concerned that Joe Biden has increased the inflation in America, has increased the debt of America so much, especially with the spending plan. And of course, you have the centrist Democrat, the conservative Democrat, Joe Manchin, saying that basically came out very strongly against this incessant spending by Joe Biden, saying Joe Biden cannot be spending that money so much. So you had the West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin coming out coming out very strongly against this incessant spending by Joe Biden. And of course, he did not support that $3 trillion package, so he had it trimmed down to $1 trillion, because of concerns about inflation. And of course, on the other hand, you have the likes of Mitt Romney not agreeing with Donald Trump, basically opposing so much. And so there are those who are suggesting that basically Joe Manchin should team up with the likes of Mitt Romney to run on a third-party ticket, maybe Joe Manchin as president and Mitt Romney as the running mate, or maybe the other way around, Mitt Romney as president, a presidential candidate, and Joe Manchin as the running mate. But I think the third parties are raising a lot of money. I think they have raised about $17 million already and have already passed the threshold to be on the ballot in 12 states. So they are going to very much fight so that a third party candidate is there. And so you have also the Kennedy family also fronting someone. Kennedy is a very powerful royalty, political royalty, especially within the Democrats. The Kennedy family is a very powerful royalty, and of course he is an anti-vaccine supporter. So basically that is going to chip away at the Republican votes, but of course also the name Kennedy is going to chip away at the Democratic vote. So this one is Kennedy is going to cut votes from both sides of the island. So I guess this is going to cut votes from both sides of the party. I think the last time a third party candidate performed strongly was in was in 1992 when you had billionaire Ross Perot running against George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton, and of course he got, I think, 17% of the vote, so he handed over victory to Bill Clinton, who only got about 43% of the vote. So you can imagine that basically. But I don't think we have had a third-party candidate that has gotten 17% since 1992. So Ross Perot handed victory, according to many people, handed victory to Bill Clinton. And then, of course, in 2000, Ralph Nader got only 3% of the vote. But I think in the state of Florida, he took enough votes away from Al Gore to hand the victory to George W. Bush. So you can imagine, and I think that is the fear of people, basically, that a third-party candidate, they don't need to do well, but they can't take votes away from your candidate. That is why in a lot of these two main party supporters, Democrats and Republicans, don't want a third-party candidate because they usually take away votes from you. It is very hard for them to win an election, a state. It is very hard for them to win a state, but they can't take votes away. Remember, in the key battleground states, you could win just by 10,000 votes. That's about just less than a percentage point. And if they take away 2 percentage points from you, they have basically tossed that election away from you, and that is why a lot of people don't want. Usually, the two main parties, they usually don't want a third-party candidate because they usually take away votes from someone. That is why I think a lot of these two main parties stalwarts don't want a third-party candidate. Look at the election in 2000 where George W. Bush was basically handed over Florida by Ralph Nader by taking votes away from Al Gore. So I think a lot of people are going to be opposing these third-party candidates. They are going to be working around the clock. The main campaign issue will be that he is going to take votes away, but that is not to take away the fact that the two-party system is broken. You have disunity within the Republican Party. It has shifted and is now a Trump personality cult. It has moved to the far right, and even as you have this war between the Orthodox Trumpists, the middle ground hybrid Republicans who have accepted the reign of Donald Trump within the Republican Party, and of course you also have that is the establishment Republicans, those Republicans that Donald Trump ran over. So that is the chaos within the Republican Party, and of course within the Democrats you have this chaos between the progressives. You have this chaos within the progressives. You have the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and of course the Squad are moving very much to the far left, favoring things such as free public tuition for all colleges. The likes of Bernie Sanders, of course, I think Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the natural successor to Bernie Sanders. So it has moved so far much to the far left, that is the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So you have the Squad moving so much to the far left, but I think they have been losing to the corporate center, so you can't understand their sentiment. The likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they have moved so much to the far left, and I think the last three Democrat presidents, that is Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and of course Joe Biden, they have all been corporate centrists. So these three Democrats have all been corporate centrists, so you can't understand very much when the likes of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are very much hesitant to join ranks with the corporate centrists. So they call them the corporate centrists. That is, they campaign on a democratic platform, but when they reach the White House, they become centrists and even sometimes go to be conservatives. You heard Barack Obama saying basically that in any other country in the world, his role would have been considered conservative. That is Barack Obama saying that in any other country in the world, his role would have been considered conservative. So you can imagine a democratic president really leading to that fact that basically in any other country in the world, his rule would have been considered conservative. So you had Barack Obama, and of course he was accused that during the day he walked with the Main Street guy, and then during the night he sided with Wall Street. So you had Barack Obama during the day castigating the big Wall Street banks such as Goldman Sachs, telling them that they have to be prepared to make amends in their policies. But then during the night, writing them an email, telling them that he really wasn't that serious. So you can imagine how Barack Obama was two-sided, talked from both sides of the mouth, and so you can imagine that basically there have been corporate centers. So do you support a third-party candidate? Do you support a third-party candidate? So that's it for now, and then I will move over now to the last part, the heart and soul. In heart and soul, I'm asking, why is prosperity gospel so prevalent? That is, why is prosperity gospel so prevalent? I think everyone is speaking about a success right here on earth. That is, success right here on earth. Basically, what does it take? Why is it that we are not preaching the redemption of the soul, the sanctity of the spirit? Why are we not preaching about that? Why are we preaching only about success here on earth? Why is it so? Why must we succeed here on earth, and is success only measured in money terms? So you have to say, a lot of people measure success today by the impact of how much money you have, and that has percolated the church. So you have a lot of pastors shifting their message towards you're going to get a good job, you're going to get a good house, you're going to get a good car, you're going to get a good neighborhood, you're going to get a job promotion. And so basically they have shifted from the gospel of Christ. So how can we have basically a gospel that is not so not centered around money, so that we can have a redemption of the soul, we can have fasting, we can have praying? And I think if we have that kind of gospel, then we are going to have a gospel that basically, if we have that kind of gospel, then we are going to have a gospel that is basically a gospel that basically teaches us to be so to have the redemption of the soul and the sanctity of to have the redemption of the spirit and the sanctity of the soul. So why do you think basically prosperity gospel is so much on the rise? That is, why do you think prosperity gospel is so much on the rise? So you let me know in the comment section. So this has been Mabinda TV. Well, for now I have looked at 4 main sections. That is basically in ideas, I've looked at the platform-based economy, and whether as gig working, freelancing, consulting merge. What is the future of the platform-based economy? Can it create the middle-class jobs that can power on America? And then, of course, in Africa perspectives, I'm looking at why is it so hard for opposition candidates to beat incumbent presidents safe and square in the ballot. And then in the Making America, I'm looking at why is there a need for a third-party candidate in America? That is there a need for a third-party candidate in America? And then number 4, I've looked at what does it mean to have that is prosperity gospel? Why is prosperity gospel so much on the rise? So now this has been Mabinda TV. This is home of compassionate conservatism, in which you advocate for a fine balance, a sweet spot between individual creative genius excellence as afforded by capitalism and society excellence as afforded by equality of opportunity. So in essence, we are calling for capitalism with a human face, that is capitalism with a human face.